Now we get to the exciting part. We actually get to write some code and create some tests that do something useful. Here's a blank project using SwiftUI. It does have unit tests included, but there's no application logic yet. Just so that we have something worth testing, let's create a model definition. I'm going to create a new Swift file and I'm going to call it person model. Then I'll create a definition for person model. I'm going to use a struct and I'll give it some properties. Let's give it a property called name, which will be the person's name. It is of type string. I'll give it a property called age of type int. Now with that model in place, I'm ready to test it. So let's switch back to my unit test file. There's one test that doesn't do anything useful that was given to us out of the gate. Let's create a new function. We'll use the test attribute. And I can call the function anything I want. What I'm going to do is check that two people that have the same age actually do have the same age. So I'm going to call it verify people's ages. Then I'm going to start to declare a constant for person 1. And what I'm hoping is that the IDE will help me complete what I'm typing, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because the test target doesn't know anything about my application target. These are two separate modules in Xcode. So what I need to do is remember to import my application target, which I'll do now. Then I'll go back to declaring my first person constant. Auto-completion works. I'll use Jack for the name and I'll give the age as 43 years old. Then I'll declare a second person. This time for the name I'll use Jill. I'll also use the age 43. Now what I'd like to do is verify that the age of the first person is equal to the age of the second person. And to do this, I'm going to use the expect macro. You haven't seen this yet, but don't worry, it's going to be covered in great detail in the module called Validating Expectations with the expect macro. In this case, the code hopefully is quite easy to read. I'm just going to put inside the parentheses that person1.age is equal to person2.age, and the expect macro will allow the test to pass if that Boolean evaluates to true. If that Boolean were to evaluate to false, then the test would fail. Next, I'd like to run the test. I would expect that there'd be a run button over in the margin, but sometimes Xcode just needs to catch up to me a little bit. The project hasn't been built since the last time there were changes made in this file, so what I need to do is rebuild the test target. I can use that shortcut key Command-Shift-U. Once I've kicked off a test build, I'll wait for it to finish, and when it finishes, there we go, the build has succeeded. You'll see that I have this button ready for me to click on to run the test. When the test succeeds, that button turns green. I just want to pass on one useful little tidbit and a gotcha because this has caught me out many times. I did hint to this earlier on in this demo, and that is if you're trying to access code from another module and the Xcode environment doesn't seem to be recognizing that code, the chances are pretty high that you haven't imported that other module. So to show you what happens and recreate this issue, I'm going to comment out the import of the main application module, and when I do that, you can see these errors that the project isn't finding those references for person model, and therefore the test target won't build. So the solution is to make sure that I am importing my application target, and then the test target can find everything it needs to build.